On April 16th, 2020, at 2 o'clock in the morning, I finished Final Fantasy VII Remake in about 33 hours. Not consecutively, of course. The next morning, I watched a lot of videos on YouTube about what the ending meant and how people felt about it, and it was then I realized that a lot of people find this ending controversial, which in hindsight, I can see why. Final Fantasy VII is a game that means a lot to a lot of people. It's a special kind of game that transcends time because it speaks to the hearts of millions of people. It's a game whose quality is outstanding despite the low polygons, and it's a game that sadly I've never finished. I bought it for both PS3 and PS4, and neither one I was able to finish. I've got nothing against the game. I'm a big fan of JRPGs, and Final Fantasy VII is absolutely one of the best out there. It's just for whatever reason, I was not able to finish it. At least before playing the remake. So why am I telling you these things? To show you who exactly it is that's talking here. I am most certainly not an OG FF7 fan or expert on Final Fantasy VII. I'm just a guy who decided to make his first actual video on YouTube, me talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake. There's a lot of you who might be watching this video having absolutely no idea what I'm talking about. Before we can begin talking about the remake, we have to go back to where it all began, back in 1997. Final Fantasy VII is a Japanese role-playing game that was released in Japan for the PlayStation 1 on January 31st, 1997. Now, you might be asking what a role-playing game is, or RPG, and to brutally simplify, it is a game which players take on roles of imaginary characters who engage in adventures. And, the distinction between a Japanese role-playing game and a regular one is... Yeah, you probably figured it out. It's one that's made in Japan. Yep, you got it! Good job! Why am I doing this? So why was this game such a milestone? Well, on the technical side of things, it was the first Final Fantasy to come into the era of the third dimension. With previous Final Fantasies, they were all done with sprites in a 2D environment. But this was the jam, baby! Woo! With the 3D environment, they are able to control a 3D camera and make it move around the playing field, all cinematic-esque. You could get so close to the characters you could almost touch them. And I mean, who wouldn't want to cut their fingers touching that beautiful spiky blonde hair? Am I right, ladies? I know it's gonna hurt, but I just can't stop. Anyway, point is that it was a big step from this to this. Got it? Okay. Cool. As for the emotional side of things, what Final Fantasy VII offered was a deep, rich world full of a bright and diverse cast of characters that took you on a vast journey full of lots of twists and turns, and it was the first Final Fantasy II to kill off a main party member permanently. Now, I will not spoil who it was for those who seem interested in playing it. Despite the limitations it had, Final Fantasy VII is a game that surpassed those limitations in order to tell a story to its player. This results in people wanting more Final Fantasy VII. So later on down the line, 2 more games set in the Final Fantasy VII universe were made for the PSP. With one being about a B+, it was pretty good, pretty emotional, but some things were kind of frustrating. And the other being a why would you do this to anyone? Don't play it. And a movie, which was a solid meh. I personally enjoyed it, but, people adored Final Fantasy VII so much that they even screamed for a remake. Which brings us nicely to 23 years later, to Final Fantasy VII Remake. Sadly, there is nothing I could say here that would be anything new. If you've heard anything about this game, then you know that the gameplay is absolutely fantastic, the graphics are next level, just like there really isn't anything new that I could bring to the table for those departments. Except, have you checked out those box physics? Just look at those boxes, man, they're so good! As for the ending, you know, my personal thoughts are, I loved it. By the way, spoilers for here on out, folks. If you don't want to hear any spoilers, skip to this time code here. I'll give you a little bit. Okay? We covered? Cool, cool, cool. The ending was a roller coaster. I was screaming the entire time when Sephiroth was on screen. To the very end. Especially when he started throwing boxes at me in real life. I mean, have you seen those box physics? The Sephiroth fight by itself is almost worth the price of the entire game. As for the controversy behind what it means for the series, I have a theory as to what this may entail. So for a lot of you people who are the original FF7 fans, you may be worried as to how the rest of the series may go, because Square decided to throw some different stuff at you at the very end here. But think about it like this. Square Enix made this game about 90% faithful. If they were going to do their own new thing with this IP, why on earth would they take time to adapt it faithfully up to 90% if they know that everyone was going to hate it, especially the new fans, or the old fans? Let's not forget that this was done so that they could flesh out the world. So they started by fleshing out Midgar, and I have to say that they were pretty successful. So who's to say that they won't do that with the rest of Final Fantasy VII? You know, in this game, there are also a lot of tiny choices that affect the story down the line, and my theory behind all this is that they're going to fully flesh out the world of Final Fantasy, while people who play the original, if they make certain choices, will get to see the story play out exactly the same. And for those who maybe want something new with their Final Fantasy VII experience, depending on what choices they make, they will get something entirely different. It is going to be both appealing to old players and new players. That's just kind of my theory on this whole thing, but we'll see how it goes when it comes out on the PlayStation 7. So, that's my thoughts on it all. You know, remember when I said that I'm just a guy who played FF7 Remake and wasn't a Final Fantasy VII expert? Well, I'm still not, but you might be wondering why I knew so much information earlier. I mean, how did I get into Final Fantasy VII if I never finished it? That's because I just simply watch YouTube. It's because I watch people play those games and care about those characters. People like Cryotic and SarahKey playing Crisis Core, bawling their eyes out at the ending. People like SuperButterBuns making a For Beginners video on Crisis Core and seeing how much she just loves the world. Watching Team 4 Star's Final Fantasy VII Machina Bridge and Super Eyepatch Wolf's Impact video. There are just so many people I have watched who just cared about Final Fantasy VII. And I think that's what this game's biggest success is. It made me care about Final Fantasy VII. The day after I beat the game, I watched Advent Children finally for the first time. Which, by the way, that ending actually got me pretty good. I bought a PSP while trying to buy a Vita, and you can bet I'm probably going to play Crisis Core on at least one of them. And this is just from a guy who has a passing knowledge on Final Fantasy VII. It made me want more of Final Fantasy VII. That's what this game's biggest success is. That so many people are going to be able to have their own Final Fantasy VII experience and fall in love with the world that we cherish and enjoy. Alright, so recording off script here. Just want to say that thank you for watching this video. I know it was probably a lot of a mess, and if you made it all the way through this entire thing, I just want to let you know I'm sorry. And also just, again, thank you for watching. Shout out to NoCommentaryNevs for letting me use their footage of Final Fantasy VI. And also shout out to SuperButterBuns, SarahKey, and Super Eyepatch Wolf for letting me show all their channels in the video. It's very kind of them to let me do that. Check out all those people I mentioned. They're pretty great people and fantastic YouTubers. They do quality work. And you know, like, just some final thoughts, I guess. You know, there may be some things I've said which maybe, you know, maybe I sound like I'm confusing or anything like that. If there's anything like that, just let me know down in the comments. Again, this is my first YouTube video, so who knows what's gonna happen. But yeah, just thank you so much for watching. And this is Mr. J doing basically whatever I want.